talk about one more global issue, and then I'll go to the next speaker. But it's an important issue. Right now, in southern Lebanon, you can constantly hear over the radio about the self-declared security zone and Katyusha rockets. What is going on with all of that? Well, if you turn, and then you take a pamphlet, that's a 4-page pamphlet. If you turn to page number 2 of that pamphlet, you will see what the Katyusha rocket looks like. They don't look exactly like this. The Katyusha rocket trucks that are used in South Lebanon, instead of having 40 tubes, have maybe 5 tubes. And sometimes they don't even, are not even on a truck, they're just mounted in some stones. And what happens is these little rockets are being fired into Israel. Now, how does this all relate to the security zone and various issues? Well, if you look at this little plexiglass piece, this piece represents the range of a Katyusha rocket. In that if you fire from this point, on a scale of a map, you go roughly 12 miles, which is roughly 20 kilometers. Now, why is the security zone there? Well, if you take this little plexiglass piece, and you start it from Israel's old border, and you push this little piece back so that these rockets can't hit any major Israeli cities in the north, what have you just sketched? The self-declared security zones you hear so much about. Why is that important? Well, now you're going to be getting a calculus. Why is the Israeli Prime Minister sending this Israeli Prime Minister, sending his 18-year-old and 19-year-old boys into the security zone, who are ambushed, shot, killed, and various other bodily harm? He's not sending them because it's a fun macho thing for him to do. He's sending those boys in because he knows if he does not send those boys in and physically control the ground, they're going to be able to come down with these Katyusha rockets. And if you look at the first page of that, then you'll see how far those things can go. They can hit Nahariya. They can hit Sfat. They can hit a whole bunch of places that they can't hit now. So what is the calculus? The calculus is, I know I'm going to be losing 18-year-old boys, but I'm intending to save 60-year-old grandmothers. And this is what's going on. Now, I'm not going to go into exactly the recent hostilities. If you want me to, and you ask me any questions later, I'll go into it. But now, let's cut to the most often hypothesized solution for the West Bank Palestinian problem. The most often talked about solution is a Palestinian demilitarized zone. Doesn't that sound clean? You know, we had a DMZ between North Korea and South Korea. No problem. Little bit of a difference. The DMZ between North Korea and South Korea has no people in it. There is no trade and commerce going in and out of that little area. There is, however, as everyone always reminds us, 1.5 million Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza. Were there to be a Palestinian demilitarized zone, all that is a promise by the government. We won't have tanks, we won't have scuds. But there will no longer be Israeli border guards. There will no longer be any type of checks on anything that goes into this territory. It's impossible to stop helicopters that fly from Jordan into these territories. None of these things happen now. And the issue is, in a Palestinian demilitarized state, if you look at this picture, will not Hezbollah and their brothers Hamas try to smuggle these little rockets in? And then you have to ask yourself, what is the percentage likelihood without Israeli border guards, without Israeli internal security making forcible arrests and breaking up terror cells in Yemen, without any of these security checks going on, what is the probability that they will smuggle a couple of these type of rockets in? And if they smuggle them in, they fire them. And remember when I said that this was 70% of the population and 80% of industrial base, I urge every one of you to come up and look at my satellite photo. You will see density of Jewish lives right here, which you can't see in this little area here. So they fire 150 Katyushas into this area here, and they kill 2 people. If they fired 150 Katyushas into this area here, there would be bedlam and mayhem. Absolute bedlam and mayhem. And by the way, Katyushas carry chemical warheads. Now let's just play through the scenario real quick of what would happen. God forbid, 1,000,000 times over, the situation presents itself that this could be fired in. The Israeli Prime Minister calls up the Palestinian Prime Minister. Hey, what's going on? What's the Palestinian Prime Minister going to say? It wasn't me. It was those radical Hamas people. And by the way, I've been told that the Hamas have chemical Katyusha rockets. And if you dare reinvade or even mobilize to reinvade, they'll fire them. And by the way, you only need binoculars at this point to see what's going on in all of Israel's critical strategic military installations. Now you should think to yourself, gee whiz, there are a lot of Israeli generals who say, yeah, no problem to demilitarize them. What is going on? Don't they know about Katyusha rockets? And this is where it gets extremely serious. In that once the Jewish consumer, meaning all of you, has a bedrock understanding of what these things look like, you can then begin to ask some common sense questions. Well, what are you going to do, Mr. General? And I have asked numerous left-wing generals this question, and they always give the same answer. No problem. We'll reinvade. Now, I gotta tell everybody, it's real pleasant when you're talking with an Israeli general, and he just flippantly says, we'll reinvade. I urge every one of you to show this to your senator or congressman and ask them, what is the American policy decision going to be when this happens? And by the way, when I'm in the senator or congressman's office, I don't say, oh, the poor Jews are going to get killed. I ask them a simple question. I say, what is the American policy decision going to be when this is fired? Are we going to protect Israel in the UN? As she's reinvading? Are we going to be even-handed, whatever that means? Or are we going to be telling Israel, if you dare even mobilize, we will not be able to protect you? Because at that point, 30 Arab countries who have Scuds will have the very pretext to use them. And guys, this is serious stuff. And this is serious stuff that directly affects the lives of your relatives. So I urge you to send these materials to your relatives in Israel and have them look through it and have them judge for themselves. Okay? All the pages that I have here, they're not Jewish books, pro-Palestinian books, this little page of the Katyusha rocket. If you turn to page 3, no, page 5. When I said that Katyusha carries a chemical warhead, I don't expect you to trust a little boy chick from New York. No. I expect you to trust modern, high-tech warfare. This is not that high-tech warfare. This is a plain military book. And in this military book, it says type of warhead. High impact, high explosive fragmentation, incendiary smoke, and chemical. This is serious stuff, everybody. So, with that, I will, oh, by the way, when you ask the left-wing general, he says, will we invade? When you ask the right-wing general, I've had right-wing generals look at me and say, you idiot, of course that's why we can't give up the West Bank. Almost looking at me and saying, you didn't know that? There must be something wrong with you. And I was trying to tell them, listen, not very many people know this. And this is the degree of ignorance. Now, I just want to make one final comment here. I think everyone, when they look through these materials, will pretty much come to a conclusion that the materials here, each point is rather a dispositive, critical point that in order to make an informed decision as to whether the land should be kept or the land should be given up, they should understand. Now, all I ask you is to look at it and use your best judgment as decent, moral people, which I'm sure you are, and think it through. And if anybody has questions or wants to come up afterwards or at their convenience, go over to Bernard's house and look at it. It will be there for, it's really a resource. And I will, what I will do to the Rice University people is I will promise to train a group of kids how to use this very effectively. And with that, I want to say thank you very much. And